You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast, and on this episode, we're talking about 1987's cult classic, Miami Connection. Get ready for ninjas, drugs, motorcycles, biker gangs, taekwondo, and rock and roll. Here we go.
Had any of you guys heard of this movie, before the last 5 years, maybe?
No,
Definitely not.
Me neither.
Yeah, it's kind of like right in that same category with Samurai Cop, Birdemic, New York Ninja, The Room, where they all became midnight movie cult phenomenons, right? And because of boutique labels like Vinegar Syndrome, Severin, they've re-released these movies, or Alamo Drafthouse, you'd get, they discover it, they throw it on like a midnight show, and then I think it just goes viral, and then you find out about it. But how did you guys find out about Miami Connection?
The only reason I knew about this movie was a friend. They did a Riff Tracks version of it, and they actually released it in the theater about like 4 or 5 years ago. And he was like, "You want to go see this Riff Tracks?" But I'd never heard of this film. It looks so ridiculous.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have a special treat for you today. We have a new house band with a new dimension in rock and roll. We have the one, the only, Dragon Sound.
This band is the only family I have.
They're all black belts in taekwondo and they're pretty bad.
I want you to mess it up by going out with a second-rate musician like that John character.
They came in here to play goddamn songs for kids!
We will stop the senseless killing. We will the war. We will stop the senseless killing. We'll even not the
Not escape the Miami Ninja!
against the ninja. We will fight the battle to win against the ninja. We will fight to battle to sin against the ninja. Against the ninja.
Boss, everybody's dead.
And I went to see it, and I practically should have brought a diaper with me. I could not stop laughing the whole entire movie. I mean, people probably thought I had some kind of problem, but every single line, every scene, I couldn't believe what I was watching.
All right, Alan, how'd you make your connection to Miami Connection?
So my introduction to Miami Connection came via John Zemsky and Peter Charbonneau, fellow Fan2Fan Podcast hosts. We do some weeknight sort of mystery science theater 3000 riffs of bad movies, and this was one of the first ones that we screened at John and Pete's backing that it will be a perfect movie for the experience, and it was. I had never heard of Miami Connection. Then once we watched it, I just kind of was like, this is gold. It's the movie that sort of has put me now over the last 6 months in this mind frame of almost kind of want to watch like as many bad movies as I can get my hands on, just to admire them for their just bizarreness. This time, I actually could kind of keep up with the psychotic child mind plot that Miami Connection. It's like Miami Connection is like when you and your friends get together and play like ninja movie in the backyard in the 80s. So.
You mentioned in the text earlier, fever dream, because I wanted to remember that's what this feels like. But
yes.
After you recommended it, John, just because I want to know if you felt the same way I have felt about this, it's a fun movie to watch the first time. It's almost more fun to recommend it to people because you want to watch them watch it, because then you get to kind of relive through their eyes. Plot be damned. This isn't really about this. This is about watching Alan watching the movie and looking at him and be like, yeah. Did you see that? Did you see that? He grabbed him with his toes. Yeah, he grabbed his nostrils. Yep, that really happened. We both saw that. What do you think?
Growing up with Pete, I was very lucky to have a friend who would
Also
enjoy
grabbed
movies.
your nostrils with his toes. Was that
Yeah,
what you were gonna
no,
say?
he would enjoy
That still happens to this day.
he would enjoy bad movies as much as I did. And he's got the most contagious laugh. So I would do a lot of like sitting there just waiting for his reaction. But yeah, with this group, it's kind of fun because we all come from different areas, different backgrounds, but we all have a love of cinema, like great cinema and bad cinema, or just anything where somebody is making an awesome attempt, whether it hits or misses. We just really enjoy both of those. Yeah, just the reactions are so amazing. And this movie, maybe more than any other that I've seen in the past 10 years, I feel like every single line, every single scene has something to offer or take away from your brain.
100%. Now, you mentioned growing up with Pete, co-host of the Fan2Fan podcast, and I kind of wanted to start a little bit with us talking about growing up, because I think before, again, other folks have gone through the origin of this movie, and we can get into that a little bit, but I wanted to talk to you guys about how we grew up in the 80s. So that usually meant we were watching movies from the 60s and 70s. And when I think of stuff from that era, right, growing up in the 80s, that means watching stuff from the 70s. It was those really cheesy Samurai Sunday, Shaw Brothers movies with the bad dubbing.
Welcome to Super 66 Samurai Sunday.
Drunken Master with Jackie Chan, The Chambers of Shaolin, and then the Kung Fu Show with David Carradine from 1972, Enter the Dragon in 73. You get all those really black exploitation Jim Kelly movies with like Black Samurai or Black Belt Jones. Like it was stuff like that was super cheesy. It used to be on channel 50 or 60 in the Chicagoland area. I think, John, like you and Pete have talked a ton of times about picks. So I have to imagine like those shows along with like Godzilla marathons, that's where you're watching Enter the Dragon. And also at the same time, you know, something that would have been like Miami Connection.
Yeah, we had Sunday, Channel 5, which I think was out of New Jersey, did like a couple movie marathon of Kung Fu movies. And they were always just completely random, low budget. And I couldn't get enough of those. And then, of course, Bruce Lee was just at my age. I was born in 72. So, you know, again, kind of getting into the teen years or even preteen years in the 80s. If you didn't worship Bruce Lee as a young boy where I grew up, I mean, you just didn't fit in with anybody. I mean, that's all we talked about for a couple of years. So all the action movies, samurai movies were huge.
And you mentioned action movies because, Alan, you and I have talked about like G.I. Joe. And I think this is where a lot of the 70s popularity of karate, kung fu, martial arts then blew up in the 80s. Because we've talked about G.I. Joe, and one of the biggest characters in that is Snake Eyes. While everyone else is holding an Uzi or a machine gun, he's holding an Uzi and a katana. So
double katanas.
Exactly. I mean, there's just something cool about that character, but it's kind of in that 80s haze of the Karate Kid, canon movies like Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja, American Ninja, Big Trouble in Little China, the action movies with like Chuck Norris, Van Damme, like all of that stuff. But I remember kids wearing karate shoes and finding throwing stars in the playground. Karate was included as an Olympic sport in the 1980s. And that kind of, I think, helped with the, like every time you would drive around, there's another like karate school in a strip mall. And all of that, plus growing up with Double Dragon and Ninja Gaiden, it was like, it was just there. And it was part of everything. Like it was in movies, like it was in that James Bond movie, The Man with the Golden Gun. There's like a ninja in it, I think, for a little bit. Yeah, if your friends are wearing karate shoes and taking karate classes and playing Double Dragon and watching Bloodsport, you can't miss it. It was there.
When you think about it, he watched, he probably watched the Bruce Lee movies and all of these things, all these movies that were impressionable on him in the 70s coming up, and then saw what was happening in the early 80s. And he went to Hollywood and he was like, look, like I'm a badass martial artist, and I'm going to pitch you this movie about me and all my orphan friends. We're best friends and like we're really good martial artists, and we're in a fucking band and we're going to fight cocaine dealers, and it'll be better than what happened with Ralph Macchio. And in Karate Kid, and the stuff that you thought would make a good movie when you were a little kid is what Miami Connection is. It's just someone actually let this motherfucker make this movie.
this can only be an 80s movie. Like only in a movie like this can you have martial arts action, biker gangs, teenagers that are balancing going to community college along with taekwondo, along with being in a band. And then on top of that, Florida drug dealers. And then, of course, you get Miami ninjas.
You're writing an imaginary script when you're 9, right? Or you're 10.
Yes.
And you play it out. And the people who are in the movie with you are your best friends. It looks like me and my friends running around the backyard in 1987 playing ninja best friends versus drug dealers. So
except now there's just a camera following you guys. So movie gets made in 87. Richard Park sees YK Kim on some Korean talk show talking about a taekwondo book. They meet up. Park says, you should make a movie. YK Kim has never made a movie, so I could not find how they got from A to B. Nevertheless, early plans, they're going to make a movie with these two brothers. YK Kim is one of them, and they're going to call it Taekwondo. Kim goes and borrows money from friends, takes out loan to finance the film. He thinks he made a good movie that's going to get tons of crowds, going to be a crowd pleaser, going to make money. Goes to 100 of distribution companies. They say no. Goes to some major companies, independent companies. They say no. He even said, and I got to quote him on this, every distribution company rejected it after screening and said to me, don't waste your time. Just throw it away. It's trash. He doesn't take no. He goes back because he's not happy with the cut. And then he ends up partnering up with Joey Diamond, who's Jack in the movie. And they end up writing a few scenes, shooting a few extra scenes. So now they have a cut that YK Kim is happy with. Finally, a small company, a small distribution company buys it for $100,000. They put it in 8 theaters around Orlando. Critical failure, doesn't make its money back. It almost bankrupts YK Kim and it disappears. And now you got to fast forward to 2009. This guy from Alamo Drafthouse, Zach Carlson, is on eBay and he's looking around for movies and he finds a 35 millimeter print for this movie for $50. And from my understanding, 35 millimeter prints for $50 is pretty cheap. So, you probably take a shot and say, what could you be stumbling on? We're lucky he found Miami Connection.
Thank you, Jesus.
Thank you, Jesus. Because he puts it in a midnight showing. It's super popular. They give him a call. And YK Kim's like thinking it's a joke, right? Like this movie bombed 20 plus years ago. Are you guys making fun of me? And I'm kind of empathetic to that because if I'm him, I'm thinking this thing like almost ruined my life. I immigrated to the US to make the dream. I made it and it didn't work. And he was like a newlywed when he made this movie. Now you're telling me people like this? Like it's got to be a prank. It can't be real. But no, I mean, maybe that's the American dream, right? Like 2+ decades later, a bunch of people are digging the music, digging the vibe. They caught up to his kid fantasy from 1987. And now it becomes this, again, midnight movie cult classic that really didn't become a cult classic until 2009, 2010, all on an estimated budget of $1 million. That's how we got here. But I'm glad that it worked out for him now because it's a hell of a good time. This movie's amazing.
Totally agree. I mean, I feel like in some ways, and maybe I'm wrong, if this movie would have even been slightly popular when it came out, we may have never seen it ever again. It may have just completely disappeared into obscurity.
The story that goes with it, too. You almost need the story to go with this.
Everyone in the movie is trying so hard.
So much crap filtered through in the 80s, made it to the big screen and made money or broke even. And a movie like this couldn't get off the ground. And then 30 years later, it's a cult classic. It almost kind of makes you, I guess, believe in the process again. Well, and what's really funny about it too is it's like where do they find the time, right? They're like, as Bernie suggested, they're college students. They're in a band, which means that they all had to learn to play instruments and they have some kind of talent. Then they got to practice these martial arts, which are like so fucking spot on that they can take out 30, 60 guys at a time with weapons.
Writer, producer, he's like a taekwondo, he's like an inspirational speaker in that Vice documentary. You can almost tell that like the people that follow him, there's like a little bit of like a culty kind of thing going on. Like I don't want to say pyramid scheme going on, and selling real estate or whatever, but dude lives up to his grandmaster title, and it seems like a lot of people buy into it for whatever reason. So at least you figure the people in the cast, the crew, the people that were involved in this, you got to give him credit. He must have said something or had like a certain energy about him. We get it. You're a little weird and a little frustrating and certainly a little annoying, but like this movie's ridiculous, and like we'll go on the ride with you, right? Like,
are we going for pizza?
Yeah.
Well, and there are
we'll eat
moments
spaghetti with you in a scene that makes no sense. That's fine.
Well, and there are moments where you like at the gym, which by the way, I love the fact that most of the time the lights are off when they're all working out for some reason. But in the gym, there's a couple of big thugs there, and you could tell nobody gave them any lines really to say. And it's like,
that one scene where they're improving.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
There's a few of those scenes in the movie where you're like, was there an actual script ahead of time, or was there some written? And then it was like, hey, you guys are sort of mad, but you also are kind of attracted to, the lead female. So, make some inappropriate comments. Like, I don't even know if there was that much direction, but the guy is like doing all these weird hand gestures. And
the hourglass hand gesture, but he does it like, instead of like the hourglass is supposed to come in, go out and come back in. And he does it like, he does it more like it's like he's working on a vase in with Patrick.
He does almost like
Swayze.
Then he's doing like almost like, measuring on the rate her hotness on like a radar scale. Like, I don't know what's going on. And
this is like, is it Ricky Bobby? Not sure what to do with my hands.
The more people randomly that show up in this movie, the more I want to pretend like there's somebody else from a different film. That's one of the things I do. I'll look at somebody, be like, they look like fake whoever, and we come up with a funny name for them.
Can we just talk about, though, the fact that this whole thing, right? Miami Connection, the plot of the movie, it kicks off because this very odd little bearded man who is part of a local gang of ninjas that stole cocaine doesn't like that his sister, who he seems to be a bit estranged from, has had a peck on the mouth with a band member like at a local club where they hang out.
Yes.
That's
the motivation for this whole thing.
The whole thing. Like, and people because die over that kiss.
Jeff, this is my friend John.
Well, Jeff, I heard a lot of good things about you. Where'd you find this son of a bitch?
He's a friend of mine from school.
A friend?
How can you act like that?
Shut up!
And because Jane's brother, and because Jeff, it feels so slighted, and maybe he's super overprotective of his sister Jane, he's also pissed off that they took his spot that like his band played at the bar, and because of that, like now Dragon Sound that's fronted by Jane, because she's like the lead vocalist.
And he's shocked by this.
Happens. Yeah. And now the layer comes in when you get to throw in Jeff is rolling with a group of biker gangs who also sell drugs for ninjas, or for like drug dealers from Panama that have ninjas as
just
like
bad guys, Bernie. It's a bunch of bad guys.
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah. What is going on? Like all of this mashed together, and then you just get some random moments where they literally just cut to a 2-minute performance.
Friends through eternity, loyalty, honesty will stay together through thick or thin. Friends forever will be together. We're up top 'cause we play to win.
They're not just a band and they that happens off screen. They actually go in and perform on stage and basically give us a little mini concert for at least 2 or 3 times in the movie.
Yeah, one song they play almost the entire song, and it is so uncomfortable because even a little kid can fake the air guitar here and there. Like, Kim should have known not to have himself in too many of those scenes, but him trying to fake the air guitar is just one of the strangest things I've ever seen. It's like that day was the first day he ever picked up a guitar in his hands.
I think it's safe to say that like this movie may have been the first time Kim hung out with other human beings.
That's a possibility.
Like, it's like he is from another fucking planet.
Are these bums your friends? There's just some misunderstanding. You don't understand. I'm her brother. When I tell you to leave her alone, leave her alone. Whatever you say. Just Just remember what I said if you don't want to get hurt.
You don't scare me at all.
Jane, I want to talk to you
all.
later.
Goodbye.
So, all right. So we talked about the training scene, the random grape feeding, which again, there's a lot of scenes in here where people are just eating. The one thing we know is that these guys train together, go to school together, play music together, and they eat together. And we're reminded of that numerous times because for some reason they're just like, hey, by the way, watch these guys carb up by eating spaghetti. And then the scene where, okay, they're orphans. It's sad. Maurice gets a glimmer of hope when he gets the letter about his father being out there. And then we're kind of all reminded, included YK Kim, who's like, oh, that's right. I forgot. You're not an orphan. Like you're with your dad. So you can tell they do a lot of talking, getting to know each other in the clubhouse. But that scene where Maurice he's going for like the full Oscar and he's like got the shirt on his side. They're all shirtless. He's the only one I think with a shirt hanging on his shoulder.
Maurice
like,
never has his pants buttoned ever. And he's got his like white underwear show. Anyway, continue. There's just more of that.
That scene
Very
is
intimate.
just amazing. I mean, he's just pouring his heart out to his friends.
Father! My father! I found my father! Oh my God! What? Is that what you said?
My dad's out there. This is it. Like we can reconnect and this would be amazing. That moment alone, like you feel awkward watching this scene. And then after that, when Maurice is about to actually go connect with his dad, they get jumped by the Miami Ninja biker gang. And then they end up going in the bayou and the swamps. I'm not 100% sure. It looked kind of rainforesty. And then they end up using their taekwondo skills to fight these ninjas, get the swords. And like you were saying, Alan, like YK Kim and Vincent, Mark, that's who YK Kim plays. They just like grab the swords and just go straight up like murder spree and end up, I think, killing more ninjas. The ninjas are bad, but like they're not competent.
They're a lot like Cobra. They're a lot like Cobra.
Yeah.
They're they're an incompetent group of bad guys. We saw them all working out in someone's mom's backyard, like leading up to the scene. They were practicing their forms, and
one
they were
guy
all
couldn't
over the
balance
place.
on one leg.
Right? These are not these are not ninjas you take seriously. I mean, these guys came with their blades, and then like
easily
Vinny Hirsch
got them taken away from them.
Right?
And
Vinny Hirsch got a taste of blood. Did you see that? Like he got blood.
Oh my God.
I think he turned vampire.
Bloodlust. He went.
He
got
bloodlust.
It's all over his chest and all over his face, and he's like running around in slow motion with the katana blade that he bristled off of somebody and just cutting fucking heads off. You have to live with these murders.
We want to almost cut to like the news the next morning where they're like 17 ninjas were found dead in the Florida Everglades.
Right.
Some of them decapitated, some of them with limbs missing. News at 11, and these guys are just like, oh yeah, I got to go to Psych 102 tomorrow, so no big deal. Let me just throw my clothes in the wash and eat some grapes.
Well, it's like the convo with the main bad guy and his sister when with the sister and her boyfriend when the boyfriend had to kill the girl's brother.
That's our boy Vincent Hirsch, who plays John, Jane's boyfriend. Yes,
with the teeth, with the giant, with the teeth. He's got the teeth.
So he's having a discussion with her, and they're trying. It's like the first moment in the whole film. They're trying to at least resolve the fact that a bunch of people were killed, and the characters have to deal with that.
Her boyfriend died, John.
Mm-hmm.
Her boyfriend died. Not her boyfriend. Her brother.
Her brother died.
Yes.
There we go. There's a little flip.
Yeah.
Right. But her brother was fucking murdered by the boyfriend.
But her like response is like total deadpan. Like, sorry, oops. It is what it is. Like, sorry.
It is what it is. You had to. I understand. It's fine. And then she said it's over. And then as the viewer, you're like, oh, okay, resolved.
It's done. Well, they have to get to band practice, John. So I mean, they have to. And if the ending text taught us anything, only through elimination of violence can we achieve world peace.
Think about it, though. Growing up in the 80s when you were a kid and you were playing in your backyard and you were like murdering fucking people left and right, like shooting people, cutting people in half with the swords, you never thought to yourself, like, well, am I going to be held accountable for these murders? And this is the beauty, the magic of the Miami Connection is Vinny and Mark killed everybody. We don't really know if they got away with it. All we do know is that, like, their friend who they were killing for lived to meet his dad, who was in makeup to look like his dad, even though they might have been the same age.
They're basically the same age, but he's got spray white hair.
100%.
It actually has a lot of the makings of like a really great like community access television movie.
Let's not go dissing community access movies now.
when I was a kid, the community access television, they would play anything right here in my hometown, and you would have these drama kids like go in and like be like, I want to make a movie, and they would pick these 2-hour insane movies. I wish I could get my hands on them now to show you guys. But this is like what I felt like I was watching were these just like nonstop, absolutely no holds barred. Like John said, there's no guardrails, action all the time. We're not going to think about the real life consequences of anything because let's face it, if you were my orphan best friend roommate and I was taking you to go see your dad, who you were talking about the whole movie, and then we got jumped and you got slightly slashed across the stomach, I would go nuts too and kill fucking everybody.
Kill all the ninjas. Can we talk a little bit, because I'm a big fan of the 80s montage, and Bernie, you were hinting about it before about the training sequence, and you kind of get into Kim again, his fetish with putting his bare feet on people's faces, his fist in people's mouths. He can't get close enough to his friends. He's literally inside the skin and parts of the.
Do you think he made that noise?
That's the dragon sound, Alan. That's the sound of the dragon.
And they go through if you've taken martial arts, they go through these very like plain sequences of like he's doing a kata. They're doing like an exercise where the guy is like attacking him with a knife, and you would go through these 4 different ways of disarming somebody. And he's like showing, instead of just doing it fluidly, he's showing like a class, like how you would do it. And I'm just like, the fact that he is such a great martial artist is again what brings this to such an odd level of he's such a great martial artist. I think he is for his size. I would like
to put him up against Zabka and see who would win.
True, but I mean he's a little guy, but I mean I thought he had some pretty great skill there. I wouldn't doubt that he's a black belt.
No, he definitely is.
But yeah, just the fact that instead of doing the training sequence, I'm getting ready, they do more of like a training sequence that your sensei would do at your school, and it just doesn't play at all.
In the local strip mall.
Like, that's what you would see at the strip mall to try to get people to sign up for your karate school.
Taekwondo.
That's right. Like, wow, these guys are doing such cool moves, Mom. Like, will you let me sign up for this? I want to learn how to defend myself. Come on, Mom, let me be a part of this.
I mean,
and they also teach me how to play the bass on the side because everyone's part of a band. And we get to sing movies like Against the Ninja and Friends, because, of course, that's what we would sing after we decapitate some people in the Florida Everglades.
Bernie, but the Friends song, right?
Oh,
I mean, it's
an after-school special.
It really does. It sounds like something that would have aired on like PBS.
Yes,
as like an educational song.
All you're missing is Nancy
honesty,
Reagan.
Friends for integrity. For like something like that.
Forever. All you need is Nancy Reagan coming out at the end saying,
yes,
that's right. Listen to your friends.
Don't do
drugs.
Yeah, and don't chop off anybody's arm today.
That's debatable.
I mean, Kim twice, Bernie, you brought this up before, but not once, but twice in 2 completely separate scenes, pulls his friends by the nose with his toes. Twice. It spins them around, pulls them. Another time puts his foot on someone's face. Another time the fist in the mouth. Like, can you imagine what was cut? Can you imagine what some actor was like? I'm not allowing you to show that.
Well,
there has to be something.
Just imagine, John, there was a version. The version we watched was the good version because YK Kim thought the one that he got was not. Like, he goes back to his boy and says, hey, Joey Diamond, Jack, the Israeli-American drummer of Dragon Sound, we got to write some sounds, write some scenes. We got to shoot some scenes because, we got to make this a complete movie. And Joey Diamond's like, all right, man, let's do that. I think the part of this movie that I think is even more interesting to me, having seen it now a few times and now talking about it with you guys, is that I think the fever dream thing and playing with friends is like a really good way to describe it, because they're playing like the filmmaking game on hard mode, right? And what I mean by that is, if we were all going to just make a movie, right? Like usually what's like the easiest way to do it? Like, let's just go make a really low budget horror movie where one of us plays a zombie. We shoot in like a graveyard or something, right? Like a slasher. Let's keep it simple. Let's take our friend who can act the best, and that person is by default the lead. And our one friend, John, who can do music. John, you're doing the score, right? That's what we do. Like you're filling in the blanks because that's how you play, right? I think of like what's that documentary American Movie with Mark Borchardt, and how he was like, it's just like a good, earnest documentary on how they tried to make this horror movie and it didn't work. But it's almost more a movie about the dude trying to make a movie, his hardships, his life. Then you see something like Birdemic, James Nunez. And when you see things about that guy, like that guy's certainly passionate and was hardcore about making a movie, but he was just trying to make like a riff on The Birds, Alfred Hitchcock movie, right? This, like, he's trying to play the game on hard mode. Like, let's make an action film with martial arts and makeup effects, because they still have some gore, as it isn't great, but it's still there. And then on top of that, we're going to shoot music. It's like, dude, if you're going to play, you can play easier than this. You don't have to work this hard, but that's why I give the guy credit. This is this crazy story, and we're still going to try it. It's just more admirable that the dude said they didn't compromise. Like, I'm glad that people that we discover it now, that you discovered it, Allen, recently, because then, hopefully you get to share it with somebody else that hasn't seen it. And they're just like, this is batshit crazy. And they share it with somebody else, and it just keeps going. And then the dude's dream of, having people discover us actually happens, 30, 40 years later.
I mean, he made this movie, when you think about it, for all of us who wanted to make movies as kids and wanted to be in the Chuck Norris movies and the Karate Kid movies and the Charles Bronson movies. And
for sure,
in a way, I don't know if he was doing it. This movie, this is why my attraction to it is I feel like it's what I would have made if I was given $1 million when I was 12. I appreciate it for that simplicity. Just that one sound that they have. You spoke about the gore, right? That one sound they have when people die and they're like, and it's like they play it over and over and over again. Every time someone dies, and it's consistently the same scream. If you go back and check it out. I mean, they put together something representative with an absolutely like topsy-turvy, wobbly, batshit crazy, sort of plot. And then this, like, the more I want to watch it again, because I want to see how many times you could take dialogue from this movie and put it in a porn movie and see if how flawlessly it would just overlay on like any random like 80s, 90s porn. This movie to me it represents, like, when John and Pete brought this to me, it represents sort of like a new chapter in my movie watching and my wife Rebecca, who's on the show often, our movie watching, which is like, we now, like, sometimes we just feel like watching something horrible so we can make fun of it, but also so we can enjoy its badness. I mean, there is some sort of like, unspoken enjoyment and enjoying a bad movie just for how bad it is.
For sure.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people feel, but sometimes they feel bad because they're like, oh, you shouldn't be making fun of this person's movie. And I'm like, I think some people miss the point. Like, if Kim was in the room with Alan and I, we would be hugging the guy and like throwing him in the air, celebrating him. Like,
do you think he would still be wearing all that makeup to make himself look like he's in his 20s?
Maybe. I think that's kind of a nice way to end this. Something with that you had said earlier, John, too, and what you mentioned now, Alan. Like, sometimes it's fun to watch like a really, really good movie that's made well, and you're in the hands of like a Christopher Nolan or a Scorsese. And then sometimes you just want to turn your brain off and watch something, escape into somebody else's idea of a movie, let it ride. Like, it gives you permission to make fun of it but not in a way where you're saying you're not making fun of the people or making fun of the movie. You're just saying like, you know what? I get how ridiculous and over the top this is, but I'm celebrating it. Like I'm a fan of this. So I want to let other people know how crazy and fun this is to watch.
Absolutely.
I mean, you got to keep in mind that you wouldn't be having all the fun you were like. John and I were watching this in the middle of the day today to prepare for this podcast, texting each other, and I'm sure giddily screaming. We were understanding it just a little bit more because we were watching it again. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, you have to have the appreciation for the fact that like he did it. He brought a movie together. A lot of people don't get past the pitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea.
He brought it all the way, all movie long. Like what he brought, I still don't know, but he brought all of it.
It was on like Donkey Kong.
So good. I'm glad that you watched this one, Alan, because I think I have one recommendation that I think I might see if you guys are interested in doing another movie. And it's called Action USA. Have you guys heard of this?
That sounds familiar, but I'm not sure if I've seen that.
It was released, same thing, in like the 80s, but it was recently remastered. And I watched it on Tubi or Freeverse, one of those two, last week or week before. And I was telling Pete, whenever you're in a place where you want to watch a really good, crappy action movie that's kind of like a riff off Beverly Hills Cop and 48 Hours, that's a movie that we'll have to watch. So if you liked Miami Connection, let's get together and do Action USA, because that movie is like Miami Connection, but also it was made basically just to be a showcase for stunt people. The stunt people's union get together and they're like, hey, let's make a movie that showcases our skills, like setting ourselves on fire, squibs, martial arts, car chases, helicopters. So it's just like a bunch of scenes. It's amazing. So much fun. So good.
That laugh that escaped me was me seeing a couple of the stills that I was flipping through, and already I was laughing.
Hands down. Alan, I'll send you guys the link for it, because if you watch the trailer and if you don't like it, then I guess unlike Dragon Force, we will not be friends through eternity, loyalty, and honesty. We won't stay together through thick or thin. If you watch Action USA,
Taekwondo.
We'll be together. We're on top because we play to win.
We're the three best friends that anyone ever had. We're the three best friends that anyone ever had.
I kind of want them now to do a sequel for Miami Connection, but in the present day, where they all get together and it's actually them, same thing, biker gang, drugs. Like I don't want them to change the plot at all. Just the same thing. Taekwondo school. They're still in school trying to get those last few credit hours to finally graduate and get their associates. That's what I want to see.
Miami Reconnection. Please make it.
I like it.